So, trying a new camera out today. Seems like it's working so far. We'll see how this video turns out. But I want to talk about something I had accidentally actually live streamed this video a few days ago, and I meant to actually just record it, and then I was going to upload it to YouTube, but I found out at the end of the video that it was actually live streaming the entire time. So actually some of you guys actually might have caught that. Some of you guys didn't, but I did want to re-record it because I think there were some things I could have done a little bit better, further explaining what that video was really about. So this is what it is. Some of you are in the beginning phases. Many of you, probably most of the people that are watching this channel, you guys are in the beginning phases of your licensing careers, meaning you're probably within 1 or 2 years of trying to build up your catalog. Your royalties still aren't paying your bills. They might be slowly getting there, or maybe they're far from there and they're not even close. But you're in this sort of in-between phase where you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the day that I can actually quit my job and then just rely on my royalties? And I totally sympathize with that because that is a scary prospect to actually say no and give up on a sure thing, which is your paycheck, and sort of rely 100% on something that's really, I mean, let's just be honest, you can't really predict how big your royalty checks are going to be. They do fluctuate. Sometimes they get really big certain months. Some months they get kind of small. So, you know, it's a really scary prospect to learn or to try to make that jump and figure out when do you feel like it's a smart move, especially if you have kids, if you have a family that relies on you and you're sort of the breadwinner and you need to be bringing in the paychecks to make sure that everything's paid. You got to be responsible about these things. And so I want to just give you sort of what I did when I was transitioning from my full-time work world to my full-time music licensing world, and what made that transition much easier, much more attainable for me. So I did a lot of independent contract work in that interim between having some savings basically from my job. I saved up a little bit to make sure I had a little cushion for myself. And then I had some royalties coming in to the point where they were sort of barely paying my bills, but they were making sure that I could pay my bills. So I was sort of at this little in-between pass where definitely wasn't getting rich, and I definitely wasn't getting any more stable income, but I felt comfortable enough that I could 100% focus on licensing. But even in that interim where I had some anxiety and some uncertainty about how much money I could be making, I did a lot of video work for a couple of clients, and mainly they were corporate clients. So people that had trade shows, product review videos, product tutorials, maybe web videos, promos, that kind of stuff. So primarily I was doing these corporate gigs where I would show up, shoot a video, film somebody, you know, mic them up, get the video shot, edit it, maybe put it on a DVD format or just put it in a sort of online movie format so they could actually have it to post on their site or whatever. And I would just do this part-time independent contract work here and there, okay? Some months I'd have a lot of clients, and so my music licensing would kind of get pushed to the back, and I wouldn't be able to produce as much music as I wanted to. And other months, that independent contract work really slowed down, and that's when my music licensing really sort of took the foreground, and I spent most of my time doing it. But the great thing about independent contract work is that you have a lot more control over your schedule, over how much you work, you know, and how much you want to dedicate to it. And you can also say no to a lot of things that if you just don't want to do it, or the budget's too low, or the client's kind of a headache, and there are a lot of those out there, you get to say no. Now, when you have a day job and you have a certain skill that you're getting paid for, you don't really get to say no, and you don't really get to decide how much you want to dedicate to your job. It's 40 hours or bust, right? You're basically selling your time to your employer, to the corporation that's employing you right now. But when you're an independent contractor, you're basically your own boss. Sure, you're still working for a client. You got to make sure that they're happy, but really you get to decide, do you want to even take on that client? How much do you want to dedicate to this client's project? You give them the expectation of when their job's going to be done, right? You can tell them like, listen, I'm kind of busy. I got a lot of other stuff going on, and it'll take a couple of weeks to get this done. Or if you're trying to just get paid tomorrow, you can tell them, listen, I'm going to get this done in 48 hours for you. Now, the tricky thing is you might be thinking, what do you sell then? What's the service you're going to offer? Now, that's what you have to figure out. It can be honestly anything that anybody around you would be willing to pay to have done. Okay. And always think about how you can serve somebody else, make their lives easier. Always try to find things that people just either don't know how to do and they really need it done, or they know how to do it, but they just don't want to do it. It's just kind of a cumbersome, boring thing, or it's tiresome. or it just takes them away from doing what they should be doing, which is focusing on their business. And I highly think you should go serve people who have businesses, all right? Consumers are willing to pay a certain amount for independent contract work. Well, let's say if you do like housework, like you can, repair windows or you can do house repairs. Yes, consumers are willing to pay thousands of dollars and they're willing to actually invest in improving their home. So if you have sort of like a skill like that, like an actual trade like that, definitely consumers will be your best friend. But for most everything else, like you do video work, you do web development work, you do social media stuff, whatever it is that you do, if you can market that towards businesses, and that's essentially what I did with my video production work, I marketed towards people who had businesses or who were, let's say, mentors or educators. And so they were running a business. They're willing to invest and spend money on their businesses because, one, typically they're going to have the budget for something like that, right? Because if they're making money and they're profitable, they've already got money set aside for you. And number two, that's all stuff that they can write off at the end of the year. So they're much more likely and able to pay a pretty fair, rate for your services. So if you can cater to businesses with whatever service or product that you can give them as an independent contractor, I think that's where you should go in terms of having a little bit of a cushion between your full-time job and doing music licensing full-time. And the last thing that I want to end this video on is that you might want to just do that now, even though you don't see the royalties growing yet, because here's what's going to be magical about basically transitioning from selling your time. If you're a W-2 employee right now, it's essentially what you're doing is you have some skills and some knowledge, and basically what you're doing is you're telling your employer, listen, I'll give you 40 hours of my week for this salary or this hourly wage, whatever, however you're being compensated. Now, there's always a cap there though, right? 40 hours, there's only so much you can do in 40 hours. And if you're just selling your time, you might get a promotion, you might get a little bonus, you might get a little bit, but the amount of exponential work that you can do or the exponential growth of your income just can't happen when you're stuck selling your time for the money, right? So think about what it is at your job right now that you're getting paid to do, right? Think about the one skill or the bundle of skills that you do right now that your employer pays you to do. Now, as long as you're not violating any, employment contracts, exclusivity agreements, or confidentiality agreements, obviously check your lawyer, make sure you're not, breaking any sort of contracts by doing this. But if you can create a small independent contractor business outside of your main employer, pretty much providing the same sort of work or something that you really do, or maybe you have a completely different skill set that your employer doesn't employ you for, start building that up now and just see where it goes, because you might be surprised to find that having some independent contract work outside of your work actually might start growing and even getting on par with the money that you're making with your employer right now. And when that starts happening, that's when you can start seeing the sort of exit date, right? When the income from your independent contract work starts to match, and then start surpassing what you're making in your full-time gig, you can rest assured fairly well that you're going to be okay, right? You've built up a substantial level of clients, number of clients that are going to be loyal to you and keep coming back to you. Obviously, you must do great work, do awesome work, and you got to be able to sell yourself, right? You got to have that skill set as well. And if you don't have that skill set, maybe you need to partner with somebody who can help you get your services out there, market yourself, whether it's online or just in your own community, wherever you are. But that's one way to basically transition into music licensing full-time, because guess what? When you're independent contracting and you're completely in control of how much work you want to do, and you can say no to people if you want to say no, you can eventually, as time goes on, let's say you're independent contracting 100% of your time, and then, you're sort of making some time for music licensing. Well, as your royalties grow and as that side of your, that side of your income starts to now come close to or surpass what your independent contract work is doing, you can start saying no to clients. You can start saying, hey, I'm kind of working on something else now, but I'm going to pass you off to an associate of mine, and he's great or she's great, and you're going to be in great hands there. You can actually start weaning your clients off of you, and now you're 100% focused on music licensing. So it's one way to go. I mean, the other way is just crank up your savings account. You basically just have tons and tons and tons of savings, so that even if you have a couple of months where your royalties aren't really paying the bills, you've got something to cushion yourself. But I think even giving you better peace of mind is just having your own clients, having your own business, and really knowing that people rely on you, right? That's a much more stable position to be in as an independent contractor, rather than just having some savings, because things happen. There's a leak in your roof, your car breaks down, and then boom, there goes all your savings. So it's much better to have stable income coming in. So it's what I did for many years, and it's definitely something that got me through that sort of instability period of like my royalties weren't exactly cranking up, and bringing in all that money, but I wanted to have something else to make sure that I was stable, and having just even a simple, and my skill set was literally just learning how to operate a camera and an editing program. I use Final Cut Pro, but really just turning on the camera, making sure it's focused, making sure the lighting's there, getting good audio. I mean, that's how I basically had all the skills for developing my channel and my program in this YouTube channel. So it's not advanced knowledge. It's not really, it's not rocket science. Trust me, this is not hard stuff. But a lot of people just don't want to do it, or they don't know how to, or they're a little bit intimidated by the little bit of a learning curve it'll take to do it, or they just don't need to spend their time worrying about how to operate their cameras and video editing. They should just be focusing on their business and their customers. So a lot of them are smart enough to realize that, and that's when you can go in there and find your little niche. So anyways, that is my 2 cents on how to bridge that gap. I hope you found some of this information useful and beneficial for you as you transition to music licensing full time.